Here at the center of the screen is our 3D cursor. It's this red and white circle. And we have a lot of power here. We can manipulate this by shift and right clicking somewhere in the viewport, and that'll allow us to move it around. If we select it here in the toolbar, we can left click, position it. Now where it sits in 3D space, it will snap to the outside of objects, and it'll align itself based on the view. But you also have the ability over here in our little properties panel, or the numeric panel, we can adjust the location and the rotation. So handy little trick, just left click and drag down. We can just type once. All right, so we've reset the zeros on those. Now this is always in a global coordinate system, or world coordinates. It doesn't change no matter what. You're always going to move it on the X left and right, Y forward and backward, Z up and down, and the rotation will be in that same coordinate system. Now if we look over here, we have move, rotate, scale, and transform, which is a combination of all of them. If we want to see that, we can come up here to the global, and that's our transform orientations. We can switch this to cursor. So now if we rotate this around the Y, you'll see that happen. Right? So now I can move that 45-degree angle, right? I can be pretty precise about it, or I can just kind of put it somewhere where I think, right? Let's go ahead and complete that. Now let's rotate that back 45 on the Y. That's location. Let's do it here. All right, if I add a cube, let's add that cube, and I want it to match that orientation, come over here to this little drop down. Right now it's aligned to world. I can align it to 3D cursor. That matches that up. Now let's move that. Now remember, we're transform orientation based on the cursor, so we're moving it that way. If I put that back to global, now I can move in the global coordinate system. I'm going to leave that on cursor for now. We'll look at the rest of those in its own little video. So maybe I want this point back to the origin. So I'll say selection to cursor, right? If I'm in edit mode, and let's say I want that point to the cursor, but I also want all of these points to go as well, let's make that the active point, and I want that to be right there. So I hit Shift S, and I will say selection to cursor, keep offset. You can also see it's got a number to it. I want that point to be there, not the center, right? So I need to change my pivot. I'm going to go to active element. Now I'm going to hit Shift S and selection to cursor, keep offset. I'm going to switch my pivot to 3D cursor now. And if I'm in any kind of view and I want to rotate it, I can rotate based on that 3D cursor. I can scale based on that 3D cursor. All right, that's and I can move based on that cursor. I can also use this to define an origin for an object. So if I wanted the origin to be here, in object mode, I can come up to Object, Set Origin, Origin to 3D Cursor, and now that is the origin point for my object. So remember, we can change our transform orientation to match our cursor, our pivot to match our cursor as well. And our 3D cursor can determine how a bunch of modifiers and tools work also.